Did you know that Night of the Living Dead, 1968, the film that gave birth to the modern zombie genre, was made on a shoestring budget and almost never made it to theaters? What started as a small independent project turned into one of the most shocking and influential horror films ever created. Before we dive into the eerie secrets, behind-the-scenes chaos, and dark truths buried within this masterpiece, make sure to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and share it with other horror fans, because what we're about to uncover will change the way you see zombies forever. Man-Zombie Clapperboard. Movie Camera Fact 01: The birth of modern zombies. When Night of the Living Dead, 1968, was released, the word zombie was never actually spoken in the film. Yet it completely redefined what zombies meant in popular culture. Before this movie, zombies were mostly tied to Haitian voodoo myths, living slaves controlled by dark magic. But George A. Romero's vision changed everything. He created mindless, flesh-eating corpses rising from the dead, driven only by hunger. The director and writer John Russo drew inspiration from Richard Matheson's novel I Am Legend, transforming the idea of vampires into hordes of cannibalistic ghouls. This was a bold and terrifying reinvention that no studio had dared to attempt. Audiences in 1968 had never seen such raw horror before. The black-and-white realism made it feel like a news broadcast from hell. Without realizing it, Romero and his team gave birth to an entire genre. Every modern zombie, from The Walking Dead to 28 Days Later, owes its existence to this low-budget Pennsylvania nightmare. Movie Camera Fact 02: A budget born from sacrifice. The entire production of Night of the Living Dead, 1968, cost around $114,000, a tiny sum even by 1960s standards. George Romero and his friends didn't have Hollywood backing. Instead, they pulled money from their Pittsburgh commercial film company, Latent Image, and from local investors, including butchers, news reporters, and even a few businessmen who just loved horror. Most of the cast and crew worked for free or for sandwiches. The zombies? Many were friends, family, or random locals who showed up for fun. To make the gruesome scenes look authentic, animal entrails were borrowed from a local butcher shop. Yes, those were real organs on camera. Despite the limitations, the creativity born from this budget constraint gave the film its gritty documentary-like realism, which made it even more horrifying. Sometimes, having no money means having no limits. Movie Camera Fact 03: The accidental public domain horror. One of the strangest facts about Night of the Living Dead, 1968, is that it accidentally fell into the public domain, meaning anyone could copy, distribute, or sell it without paying the creators a cent. The mistake happened because the film's distributor changed the title from Night of the Flesh Eaters to Night of the Living Dead, but forgot to include the proper copyright notice on the prints. This blunder cost Romero and his team millions in potential earnings. Yet, ironically, it's this very mistake that helped the film spread like wildfire across the world. Television stations, VHS bootleggers, and theaters everywhere showed it freely, turning it into a massive underground success. Without that error, it might never have reached so many viewers or become the legend it is today. Movie Camera Fact 04: The controversial hero, Dwayne Jones. Casting Dwayne Jones as the lead in Night of the Living Dead, 1968, was groundbreaking. At a time when African-American actors were rarely cast in heroic or complex roles, Romero made Jones the film's protagonist, not because of race, but because he was the best actor for the job. However, this choice carried deep cultural weight. Released during the Civil Rights Movement, the film's ending, where the black hero is tragically mistaken for a ghoul and shot by white vigilantes, was viewed as a powerful and horrifying social commentary. Romero later said that the timing was purely coincidental, but the message was impossible to ignore. It transformed Night of the Living Dead into more than just a horror film. It became a chilling reflection of America's racial tensions in the late 1960s. Movie Camera Fact 05: Real meat and fake blood. The gore in Night of the Living Dead, 1968, was shockingly realistic for its time, and part of that realism came from the film's resourceful use of everyday items. The flesh the zombies devoured wasn't fake latex, it was real animal meat donated by a local butcher. The actors described the smell on set as unbearable, especially under hot lights. For blood, the team used Bosco chocolate syrup because it looked perfect in black and white and was cheap to buy. The contrast of dark syrup and glistening organs created one of horror's most iconic visual styles. When audiences first saw it in theaters, many fainted or walked out, unable to handle such graphic realism. But that gritty, homemade look became the film's signature and defined the raw, unfiltered terror that made Romero's work unforgettable. Movie Camera Fact 06: The shocking premiere that no one expected. When Night of the Living Dead, 1968, premiered on October 1, 1968, at the Fulton Theater in Pittsburgh, nobody was prepared for what they were about to witness. The audience included families and even young children who thought they were attending a fun monster movie like the old Universal classics. But halfway through the film, when the dead began to eat human flesh, the theater went silent. People screamed, cried, and some even fainted. Critics were horrified. One review called it a vile piece of sickening trash. Yet, Roger Ebert famously defended it, saying it was a terrifying but honest mirror of society's collapse. That controversial reaction made history. Romero's film wasn't just scaring people, it was changing them. Overnight, horror cinema grew up. Movie Camera Fact 07: The birth of the modern zombie. Before Night of the Living Dead, 1968, zombies in film were tied to voodoo folklore, mindless slaves raised by black magic. But Romero completely reinvented them. His creatures weren't spellbound servants, they were the dead who walked the earth, driven by hunger for human flesh. This was the first film to portray zombies as flesh-eating ghouls, forever changing horror. The rules Romero created: slow movement, headshots, infection by bite became the foundation of every zombie story after. From The Walking Dead to World War Z, they all trace their DNA back to that low-budget black-and-white nightmare from 1968. George Romero didn't just make a horror film, he invented a genre. Movie Camera Fact 08: A film that reflected the chaos of 1968. Released during one of the most turbulent years in American history, 1968, Night of the Living Dead mirrored the chaos of its time. The Vietnam War was raging, Martin Luther King Jr. had been assassinated, and trust in authority was collapsing. Romero's movie, though not overtly political, captured that feeling of society breaking down. The scenes of armed posses, news broadcasts, and mindless violence echoed the real-life footage people saw on TV every night. Viewers left theaters not only disturbed by the undead, but by how real it all felt. The zombies were terrifying, but the living were worse. It was a horror film that spoke directly to the fears of a nation unraveling. Movie Camera Fact 09: The ending that haunted a generation. The ending of Night of the Living Dead, 1968, remains one of the most devastating in film history. After surviving a night of terror, Ben, played by Dwayne Jones, emerges alive, only to be shot dead by a group of armed men who mistake him for a zombie. There's no dramatic music, no hero's farewell, just a sudden, brutal end. Then, in chilling silence, still photos show his body being burned with the other corpses. Romero said the ending wasn't written as racial commentary, but audiences in 1968 couldn't ignore the symbolism: a black man killed by white men in rural America. That tragic conclusion turned a horror movie into a national reflection on race, violence, and humanity itself. Movie Camera Fact 10: A legacy that never died. Night of the Living Dead, 1968, didn't just inspire movies, it created an entire cultural phenomenon. Its success led to 5 official sequels by Romero, including Dawn of the Dead and Day of the Dead, and countless unofficial remakes, tributes, and parodies. It influenced video games, Resident Evil, TV shows, The Walking Dead, and even academic studies about consumerism and fear. The Library of Congress later added the film to the National Film Registry, calling it culturally, historically, and aesthetically significant. More than half a century later, its black-and-white terror still feels alive. Because in Romero's world, the dead never rest, and neither does the fear they left behind. Movie Camera Fact 11. A last-minute casting decision that changed everything. Originally, the role of Ben wasn't written for a black actor. George Romero admitted the script never mentioned race. It was Dwayne Jones's audition that changed everything. When Jones read the lines, his calm authority and intelligence transformed Ben from a simple survivor into a natural leader. Even though Romero didn't intend a racial message, the film's release during the civil rights era gave it unavoidable political weight. Jones himself rewrote some of Ben's dialogue, removing what he felt were uneducated lines. The result? One of the first black heroes in horror cinema, cool-headed, brave, and utterly human. His performance defied stereotypes and became a turning point in representation, showing that true strength has no color. Movie Camera Fact 12. The movie that accidentally entered the public domain. When Night of the Living Dead, 1968, was released, its distributor made a costly mistake that became legendary. The original title was Night of the Flesh Eaters, but it was changed at the last minute. Unfortunately, when the new title was added to the print, the copyright notice was left off, which automatically placed the film in the public domain. That error meant anyone could copy, sell, or broadcast it without paying a cent. For decades, the film was played endlessly on late-night TV, VHS tapes, and horror marathons. Ironically, while Romero never made much money from it, that copyright accident helped make the movie immortal, spreading its influence across generations. Movie Camera Fact 13. How a chocolate syrup became blood. Back in 1968, there were no CGI effects. Everything in Night of the Living Dead was practical, cheap, and disturbingly real. The film's budget was so tight that Romero and his crew used Bosco chocolate syrup for blood. It looked perfectly black on film, especially in the stark black and white lighting. Animal organs from a local butcher shop were used for the zombies' meals, and the cast often volunteered to be splattered with fake guts. Marilyn Eastman, who played Helen Cooper, even smeared chocolate blood on her face during the film's most disturbing scenes. It was disgusting, primitive, and completely effective. Every ooze, bite, and crunch added to the film's grim realism, making it feel less like a movie and more like a nightmare caught on tape. Movie Camera Fact 14. The house that horror built and destroyed. The infamous farmhouse where Night of the Living Dead takes place wasn't a movie set. It was an abandoned house scheduled for demolition. The filmmakers borrowed it for free, but they had to clean it, furnish it, and finally burn it down for the finale. Local Pittsburgh residents even helped gather old furniture and curtains to make it look lived in. Because the film was shot out of sequence, the crew had to rebuild sections of the house multiple times after partially destroying it for earlier scenes. When the movie wrapped, the house was completely demolished, just as it appears in the final moments. Today, nothing remains of that haunted set except ashes, photographs, and memories burned into cinema history. Movie Camera Fact 15. The Night That Never Truly Ended. Decades after its release, Night of the Living Dead, 1968, continues to rise again like the creatures it created. Every Halloween, theaters across the world still screen it to packed audiences. Universities teach it as a case study in independent filmmaking, social commentary, and visual storytelling. Its lines like, "They're coming to get you, Barbara," have entered pop culture forever. Even modern filmmakers like Quentin Tarantino, Jordan Peele, and Zack Snyder cite Romero's masterpiece as inspiration. What began as a $114,000 black-and-white indie project became a timeless legend, a story about fear, survival, and what it means to be human when the world collapses. The night may have ended on screen, but in cinema history, it never will. Night of the Living Dead, 1968, didn't just terrify audiences, it redefined horror and reshaped pop culture forever. From censorship battles to its accidental loss of copyright, the film's legacy is as haunting as the story itself. Which fact about this horror classic shocked you the most? Tell us in the comments below. And remember, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe, because there are still countless secrets crawling out from the dark corners of cinema. Candle Eye.